It is worrying because this shows that the pay-to-key threat actor managed to get sensitive information that involves the IA. So the message here is quite clear. Be careful. We're here to damage you, and we are able to penetrate even your most sensitive networks.
November 2020. Across Israel, employees arriving at work began encountering the same message glowing on computer screens throughout their offices. The message on screen read, "Your files are encrypted." Workstations stopped responding. Internal networks became inaccessible, and servers that normally handled the daily operations of logistics firms, insurance companies, and technology providers suddenly refused connections. At first, many employees assumed the problem was a temporary technical failure, the kind that occasionally interrupts corporate systems and is usually resolved by a restart or a call to the IT department. But the problem did not disappear. Within hours, internal company documents began appearing online on a website controlled by the attackers, including financial reports, internal communications, and employee records that had never been intended to leave corporate networks. The attackers attached a clear message to the leaks: pay the ransom, or additional data would continue to be published. Over the following weeks, more than 80 Israeli companies reported ransomware incidents connected to the same malware strain. The victims included logistics firms responsible for shipping operations, insurance companies handling financial data, manufacturing companies operating industrial systems, and technology providers connected to critical parts of the economy. Security researchers eventually identified the ransomware responsible for the attacks. It was called Pay-to-Key. At first glance, the campaign appeared similar to other ransomware outbreaks that had affected businesses around the world in recent years. However, investigators soon began noticing patterns suggesting that the operation might be connected to something larger than a typical cyber criminal extortion scheme. To understand why, researchers began examining the broader cyber conflict that had been unfolding in the region for years. The origins of that conflict can be traced back at least a decade. In 2010, a highly sophisticated computer worm, later known as Stuxnet, infiltrated Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, targeting the industrial control systems responsible for operating uranium enrichment centrifuges. Instead of simply stealing information or disabling software, the malware subtly altered the behavior of the machines while continuing to report normal operations to engineers monitoring the system. The result was physical damage to the centrifuges. Stuxnet quickly became one of the most widely analyzed cyber operations in history because it demonstrated that malicious software could produce real-world physical effects. Although neither government officially acknowledged responsibility, numerous investigations by cybersecurity researchers and journalists attributed the operation to the United States and Israel. Following the discovery of Stuxnet, Iran began expanding its own cyber capabilities. Over the next decade, several Iranian-linked hacking groups were observed conducting operations against financial institutions, government agencies, and private companies across multiple regions. These campaigns included denial of service attacks against banks, espionage operations targeting telecommunications providers, and intrusions into organizations connected to critical infrastructure. Israel remained one of the most frequently referenced targets in threat intelligence reports. At the same time, Israeli cyber operations were also widely reported by security researchers and journalists analyzing regional cyber activity. By 2020, many analysts described the situation as an ongoing confrontation between the two countries, in which both sides were increasingly using digital tools to gather intelligence, disrupt systems, and demonstrate technical capabilities. It was within this environment that the Pay-to-Key campaign emerged. Technical analysis later showed that the attackers behind Pay2Key relied primarily on previously disclosed software vulnerabilities rather than unknown exploits. Corporate networks frequently depend on systems such as VPN gateways, remote access servers, and web-based management platforms that allow employees to connect to internal resources from outside the office. When vulnerabilities are discovered in these products, vendors typically release security patches that organizations can install to close the security gaps. However, many companies delay installing these updates, leaving their systems exposed to attackers scanning the internet for exactly these weaknesses. According to multiple cybersecurity reports, the Pay2Key operators systematically searched for organizations running outdated versions of widely used enterprise software, including products developed by vendors such as PulseSecure, Fortinet, Citrix, Palo Alto Networks, and F5. Once a vulnerable system was identified, attackers were able to gain entry into the internal network and begin moving through the environment. Instead of immediately deploying ransomware, the intruders typically spent time exploring the network, identifying critical systems, escalating privileges, and collecting sensitive data from compromised servers. Investigators believe that in some cases, the attackers remained inside networks for extended periods before activating the ransomware itself. During that time, internal documents were copied from company systems. Only after the attackers had secured the stolen data did the encryption phase begin. This technique, often referred to as double extortion, has become increasingly common in ransomware operations because it allows attackers to pressure victims even if they have reliable backups. When Pay2Key finally activated, files across servers, workstations, and shared drives were encrypted, preventing companies from accessing the systems required for their daily operations. As researchers continued analyzing the campaign, several threat intelligence firms reported technical overlaps that suggested links between Pay2Key activity and operations associated with the Iranian group Fox Kitten. Fox Kitten, also named APT-35 and sometimes called Pioneer Kitten, has been linked by security researchers and government agencies to cyber operations targeting telecommunications providers, government organizations, and private companies across multiple regions. Investigators examining Pay2Key attacks noted similarities in infrastructure usage, access techniques, and operational patterns that were consistent with activity attributed to the group in earlier campaigns. Public cybersecurity advisories issued later by government agencies referenced similar findings. Attribution in cyber operations is typically based on technical indicators and intelligence analysis, rather than courtroom evidence. During the Pay2Key campaign, the attackers maintained a public online presence on social media and on encrypted messaging platforms, where they posted updates about the attacks and shared links to the leak website releasing stolen documents. This communication strategy increased public visibility around the incidents, and it added pressure on affected organizations. One of the most significant developments in the campaign occurred in December 2020, when attackers gained access to the network of Amital Data, an Israeli company that develops logistics management software used by freight companies and shipping brokers. Because Amital's systems were connected to multiple clients operating within the logistics sector, the breach created an opportunity for attackers to reach additional organizations. Security researchers later described the event as a supply chain attack, in which attackers compromise a vendor whose systems are integrated with many customers rather than targeting each company individually. Following the breach, dozens of Amital's clients experienced disruptions associated with the Pay2Key ransomware. Logistics companies reported difficulties accessing cargo tracking systems and customs documentation platforms that were essential for coordinating shipments and managing supply chains. Around the same time, the attackers also claimed to have accessed systems belonging to Israel Aerospace Industries, one of the country's largest defense contractors, and published samples of internal data online. While the full extent of the breach was not publicly confirmed, the claim attracted significant attention because of the sensitivity of the organization involved.
An idea of the significance of this report, the apparent breach. How big is it? How worrying is it?
First of all, it is worrying because this shows that the pay-to-key threat actor managed to get sensitive information. This shows that he had a footprint and persistency inside the network. At this time, they're working diligently in order to make sure and validate this information. But this, again, is a worrying because it shows that they had persistency and a foothold inside this organization.
Security specialists noted that if attackers were able to obtain internal directory structures or access credentials, it would suggest that the intruders had maintained access long enough to explore sensitive systems within the organization. This type of persistence is often associated with advanced intrusion campaigns, where attackers focus on maintaining long-term access before deploying ransomware or releasing stolen information. Although public reporting about pay-to-key declined after early 2021, cybersecurity researchers later identified new malware samples sharing portions of the original ransomware code. One variant, called Networm, included modifications intended to make forensic recovery more difficult by changing how encrypted data was stored on compromised systems. Several years later, analysts reported the emergence of another variant known as Pay-to-Key, which hosted its infrastructure on the Invisible Internet Project, an anonymity network designed to conceal the identity and location of servers and users. Researchers observed that this version of the malware appeared to be offered as part of a ransomware as a service model in which developers maintain the ransomware platform, while independent attackers carry out the intrusions. This model has become increasingly common within the cybercrime ecosystem. The Pay-to-Key campaign illustrates several broader trends that cybersecurity researchers have observed in recent years. First, it demonstrates how geopolitics can extend into the private sector, with companies that are not directly involved in government or military operations becoming affected during cyber conflicts. Second, it highlights the increasing use of double extortion strategies in ransomware attacks, where data theft is combined with encryption to increase pressure on victims. Third, the campaign showed how supply chain relationships can amplify the impact of a single breach, allowing attackers to reach multiple organizations through one compromised vendor. Finally, many of the initial entry points used during the attacks involved vulnerabilities that had already been publicly disclosed and patched by vendors. For cybersecurity professionals, the incidents reinforced the importance of patch management, monitoring, and supply chain risk assessment. Pay-to-Key was not the largest ransomware campaign ever recorded. It remains a case frequently referenced by analysts studying the intersection of cybercrime, cyber espionage, and geopolitical conflict. In a highly interconnected digital economy, the systems that support business operations are also part of a broader security landscape. Vulnerabilities in those systems can have consequences far beyond a single network.